Hi, everybody. Welcome to Phil and Dave's Excellent Adventures. Just Dave. Today, I'm here talking about the movie The Power of the Dog. So, this is going to be a spoiler review. If you haven't seen the movie yet and you are concerned about spoilers, I would suggest you go ahead and watch the movie first before you watch this review. The Power of the Dog is a 2021 Western movie directed by Jane Campion. It's based on a 1967 novel by Thomas Savage. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons, and Kodi Smit-McPhee. It takes place in 1925 Montana. Wealthy ranch owner brothers Phil and George Burbank meet a widow named Rose Gordon, who's played by Kirsten Dunst. Her son is played by Kodi Smit-McPhee. So in the movie, basically, George ends up meeting Rose, marrying her, and Phil is not very happy about that. And he sort of torments both her and her son, leading her to alcoholism. And well, a lot of other things happen. So what I liked about the movie is the cast. The cast is all great. Benedict Cumberbatch is amazing. He's sort of the lead of the movie, and he very much carries this movie in a lot of ways. But Kirsten Dunst is also really, really good in this. Jesse Plemons is always solid, and Kodi Smit-McPhee is my favorite character in it. And he's also great. He's always really good. The chemistry between Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons I thought was really good. They are a real-life couple. I think they've got a couple kids together. So I wasn't surprised by that. They've been together before. They did Fargo, the TV show Fargo before this. There's a scene where Kirsten Dunst is playing the piano, and it looks like she's actually playing the piano, and I was really impressed by that. And I looked it up, and it turns out she did. She actually learned 2 pieces for it, and they cut the other piece. But yes, she's actually playing her piano. It's something that's very easy to fake in movies. The piano covers up the hands a lot, but you can see she's actually playing it, and I thought that was really cool. And I thought that, yeah, both Plemons and Cumberbatch and Kodi Smit-McPhee, they were all around really good performances and a really interesting story. As far as what I didn't like about it as much, at first Cumberbatch's accent kind of threw me off. I know he's a British actor, and he and Hugh Laurie both do that kind of thing where they're like, I'm an American now. It definitely seemed a little weird at first to me, and I was sort of questioning his casting just based on that, I guess, at first. But I got used to it, and I really think his casting worked out a lot in this movie, and he was great at it. So he is mean to the horse, and that bothered me a little bit. I mean, it's his character is being mean, but still, yes, there is some sort of mistreatment of animals in this movie. If that's something you are sensitive to, you probably wouldn't like this movie very much. I didn't think the two of them were very believable as brothers. They just don't look very similar at all. I think I had read that Paul Dano was supposed to play Jesse Plemons' role, but he couldn't because he's doing the Batman. I see Dano and Cumberbatch looking more similar, although the age difference between them is greater. But also he calls him Fatso all the time, so I don't think Paul Dano that would work for. I'm not sure. I will say this got me interested to read the book more because I feel like the book is interesting, but I also feel like they added a lot of things to this movie that probably weren't in the book initially. Thomasin McKenzie is in this. Thomasin McKenzie is the little girl from Jojo Rabbit. And I saw her and I thought it was her, and she's not in it very much, though, to the point where I thought maybe it was just somebody else who kind of looked like her. But no, it's her. She's just only got a couple scenes, and she's doing also a weird voice. Maybe that's just her voice. I don't know. Adam Beach shows up for one scene. Again, love Adam Beach. Great guy. Not enough Adam Beach. We needed more Adam Beach. It didn't make sense for the story, but still. You could argue that maybe what they're doing, so really in the story, it sort of seems like it may be a coming of age type story where Peter is sort of taught by Phil how to become a cowboy and how to be a real man. But that's really not what this story is about. It's really more about toxic masculinity, closeted homosexuality, and I guess just the effect that people can have on each other, and that really a toxic person can have on the people around them. That being said, Benedict Cumberbatch is the toxic person, and his character is just so unlikable and such a jerk and so immature. He's like a child, like a teenager whose mom is getting married, and he's lashing out about it. But because he is Benedict Cumberbatch, an actor who we're familiar with, I'm familiar with, and an actor who I like, I feel like you end up really caring about his character and sympathizing with his character. And you could even argue in some ways his character is the victim of the story. Other things that I didn't necessarily like. So in all of that, there's a bit of you could argue oversimplification, or I worry that some people could interpret this movie as being essentially that all toxic males are really just closeted homosexuals, and maybe that's true. But I think that's it's a little bit too obvious, a little too simple, and obviously that's not what the movie's saying, and it's unfair for me to judge the movie based on the way that I think other people could interpret it. But for example, Phil is very charismatic. He sort of has a group of lackeys who follow him because he's the boss, but his sort of behavior could influence them, and then those people, even if they're not closeted homosexuals, could then perpetuate this sort of toxic masculinity that Phil is perpetuating. And I'm sure that the filmmakers are aware of that. That's just something that I thought of. I don't know. Yeah, so other than that, the passage of time isn't very clear in the movie. They skip over a lot. They sort of skip over Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst's entire romance. They sort of meet. He helps her serve some guests at her hotel, restaurant, whatever. And then next thing you know, they're getting married. And that kind of stuff happens a lot. There's a point where Peter, Kodi Smit-McPhee, is learning how to ride a horse. They show him fall off. The next scene, he puts some rocks in the backpack and he rides a horse fine now. You can assume that stuff happens, that there's a passage of time and things are happening off camera that we're not seeing. But sometimes it can be a little hard to understand exactly how much time has passed. That being said, I think it's a very conscious choice they made, and it makes sense. They really just focus on sort of the important things. So it's a little hard to follow, maybe, or it seems a little jerky, but I also think that the story is conveyed accurately, and I didn't really have too much of a hard time following the story. The ending is a little ambiguous to the point where I thought I knew what happened, but I did have to go and look it up online just to make sure that my interpretation was the same as everyone else's and was what the filmmakers were going for. There's a lot going on here. So Jane Campion directed it. She is most famous for directing The Piano, which I believe won the Academy Award or was at least nominated for it. And she's done some things since then, but nothing really as high profile as that. I guess In the Cut, maybe about 10, 11 years ago. And this is her first movie, I think, in about 10 years or so, unless I missed something, or maybe some TV stuff. It's filmed in New Zealand. It takes place in Montana, but it's filmed in New Zealand. That's where Jane Campion is from. Not surprising. But there's a bird, for example, that's only native to New Zealand that they show in this. So it is a little funny, but again, did not bother me, didn't take me out of it. Like I said, Phil is very unlikable, but Cumberbatch makes you feel sorry for him and really care about the character. At first, I noticed this sort of latent homoeroticism, and then it really becomes more blatant. There's this sort of relationship between Phil and this Bronco Hank character. And at first you see, oh, he really idolizes this guy. He was a role model. And then you realize, oh, maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was a sexual thing. And then we're led to believe that there was actually a physical relationship between him and Bronco Hank, which is interesting and is ironic or it is hypocritical of his character, because he starts out sort of making fun of Kodi Smit-McPhee's character, Peter, for being effeminate. So obviously that's a little bit of projection and something there. It's also arguable that they don't really establish the age difference between Bronco Hank and Phil. I guess I could figure it out if I did the math, because there's a tombstone that says when Bronco Hank was born. I don't remember now. But yeah, it could be argued that, Hank groomed Phil and that Phil is actually the victim here of Hank. And again, this is spoilers here, but in the end, Hank is sort of the victim of Peter. Because it is a little unclear, but it seems that Peter kills Hank. Peter kills Phil, rather. He sees the influence that he's having on his mother, and he decides to step in and do something about it, which, again, very interesting, very cool. There were times where I was really concerned with Phil's intentions. Once he starts being nicer to Peter, I was worried that he was then sort of grooming Peter, and there's this very erotically charged scene between them where they're smoking a cigarette together, and I was worried it was going to go sort of down a call me by your name type path, which was not exactly the movie I wanted to see. But it didn't go down that path at all. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just not what I was looking for. There's some things that maybe aren't explained, or really the movie doesn't explain much to you at first. So there's times where you're going, wait, I don't understand, why is this happening? But then usually it does sort of later explain it. But it's not. It's sort of like in the movie Red Notice, where they reveal these twists at the end, and then they show you the clip of that scene earlier in the movie to remind you of when that happened. This movie doesn't do that. This movie trusts that you are intelligent enough and your memory is good enough to understand what happened without needing it explained for you. So yeah, I think that's about it for me as far as the review goes. Yeah, I give it a 9 out of 10. It's a really good, really interesting movie. They're talking, I've heard, awards buzz for Oscars for it, and I can definitely see that happening. It seems like the kind of movie for that. And yeah, I'm interested in it. I think it's a good time for it. It makes sense. I'm really fascinated by the fact the book was written in 1967. I think a lot of this stuff was maybe more implied in the book than it is in the movie. But yeah, great movie. I would definitely say check it out if you get a chance to. Hopefully you already have if you're watching this review. And we'll be back next week. I'm not sure what we're going to review, but I know Spider-Man is coming out in 2 weeks, and Phil and I are definitely going to be reviewing that. So thank you so much for watching. Have a good night, and we'll see you here again next week.